Long, long ago, before even time had come to be, there was Ometeotl, the dual god. Ometeotl was made by the union of the god Tonecatecutli and the goddess Tonicacehuatl, the lord and lady of our sustenance. And so, Ometeotl was both one and two at the same time. They came to be out of nothing, and for a time they were all that was in the whole of the universe, for nothing else had yet been made. Tonecatecutli and Tonicacehuatl had 4 children. There was Red Sipetotec, the flayed god of the seasons and the things that grow upon the earth. Black Tezcatlipoca, smoking mirror, god of the earth. White Quetzalcoatl, plumed serpent, god of air. And blue Huitzilopochtli, hummingbird of the south, god of war. The god-children lived in the 13th heaven with their parents. Of these children, Tezcatlipoca was the most powerful. Together, the 4 children of the dual god decided that they would like to create a world and some people to live in it. It took them several tries before the world became the way we know it today, because the gods fought over who should be the sun and rule the earth. The first attempt at creation was made by Quetzalcoatl and Huitzilopochtli. First, they made a fire, which was the sun, but it wasn't big or strong enough to give much light or heat, as it was only half of a sun. After they made the sun, Quetzalcoatl and Huitzilopochtli made a man and a woman. They called the woman Oxomoco, and the man Zipacton. The gods told the man and the woman what work they were to do. The man was to be a farmer, while the woman's duty was to spin thread and weave cloth. The gods gave the woman the gift of maize. Some of the grains were magical and could cure illnesses or help foretell the future. Together, Oxomoco and Zipactonal had many children, who became the Masehuales, the farmers who worked the land. Even though there was already a half-sun, and even though there were already a man and woman, the gods had not yet created time. This they did by making days and months. Each month had 21 days, and when 18 months had gone by, this made 360 days, and that span the gods called a year. After there was a sun, a man and a woman, and time, the gods created the underworld, which was called Mictlan. Then Quetzalcoatl and Huitzilopochtli made 2 other gods to rule over this place. They were called Mictlantecuhtli and Micticacehuatl, the lord and lady of Mictlan. When all this was done, Quetzalcoatl and Huitzilopochtli created some water, and in it they placed a giant fish. The fish was called Zipactli, and the earth was made out of the body of the fish. Oxomoco and Zipactonal had a son named Piltzintecutli. The gods looked upon him and saw that he had no wife. At that time, there was a goddess of beauty and young women called Soki Quetzal, flower Quetzal feather. The gods took some of Soki Quetzal's hair, and from it they made a woman to be Piltzincutli's wife. The gods looked at all the things they had created, and they were not satisfied with them, especially with the sun, which was too weak to give much light. Tezcatlipoca thought about how to make the old sun brighter, but then he thought of a better idea. He turned himself into the sun. This new sun was much better than the old one. It was a whole sun, and it gave enough light to the world the gods had made. This was the beginning of the first age of the world, the age of the first sun. The gods also wanted more beings in their new world. They made a race of giants who ate nothing but pine nuts. The giants were very large and very strong. So strong were these giants that they could uproot trees with their bare hands. So, for a time, Tezcatlipoca shone brightly over the world the gods had made. But after this world had existed for 13 times 52 years, or 676 years, Quetzalcoatl thought his brother had reigned as the sun for long enough. He took his club and struck Tezcatlipoca with it. sending him plummeting down, down, down into the waters that encircled the world. Tezcatlipoca was very angry that Quetzalcoatl had done this. He rose up out of the water in the shape of a giant jaguar, and in this shape he roamed about the whole earth. The jaguar hunted all the giants and devoured every one of them. Once all the giants had been eaten, Tezcatlipoca rose back up into the heavens, where he became the constellation Jaguar, Ursa Major. The second age of the world was the age of the second sun. This was the age of wind. Quetzalcoatl made this world, and Quetzalcoatl was the sun during this age. The Mazahuales lived in this age eating nothing but pine nuts. The second age also lasted for 676 years, until Tezcatlipoca took his revenge on his brother. Tezcatlipoca came to the world in a blast of wind so great that Quetzalcoatl and the Mazahuales were blown away, although some of the Mazahuales escaped the blast. These turned into monkeys, and they ran away into the jungles to live. After the time of the second sun was complete, the god of rain, whose name was Tlaloc, he who makes things sprout, became the sun and ruler of creation, and his age is the age of the third sun. This age lasted for 7 times 52 years, or 364 years. During this age, the people ate the seeds of a plant that grew in the water. But again, Quetzalcoatl destroyed this world. He brought down a rain made of fire, and all the people were turned into birds. After Quetzalcoatl ended the reign of Tlaloc, he gave the world to Tlaloc's wife, Chalchiuhtlicue, Jade Skirt Woman, to rule. Chalchiuhtlicue was the goddess of rivers, streams, and all manner of waters. She was the sun for 6 times 52 years, or 312 years. This fourth sun age was a time of great rain. It rained so long and so hard that there was a great flood that covered the earth. The flood washed away the Mazahuales, turning them into fish. After the flood was over, the sky fell down and covered the earth so that nothing could live on it. The gods looked upon the world they had made and saw how it had been destroyed by their quarreling. Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca made peace with one another and went down to rebuild the world. The gods each went to one end of the world, where they transformed themselves into great trees. With their mighty tree limbs, they pushed the sky back up into its place, and they hold it there still. The god Tonacatecutli, the father of Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, looked down and saw that the brothers had ceased their fighting and had worked together to mend what their anger had broken. Tonacatecutli therefore gave the brothers the starry heavens to rule, and he made a highway of stars for them to use as they traveled. This highway is the Milky Way. Then the gods created new people to walk upon the earth. Once the sky had been put back in its place, Tezcatlipoca took flint and used it to make fires. These fires lit the world, for the old sun had been destroyed in the flood, and a new one had not yet been made. Also, there were no people, for the giants had all been devoured, and the people had all been turned into monkeys, birds, and fish. So, Tezcatlipoca met with his brothers to take counsel about what to do. Together, they decided that a new sun would have to be created. But this would be a new kind of sun, one that ate human hearts and drank human blood. Without sacrifices to feed it, this sun would cease to shine, and the world would return to darkness once more. So, the gods made 400 men and 5 women, and these were to be food for the new sun. Some say that Quetzalcoatl and Tlaloc each wanted their sons to become the 5th sun, and that these gods each took their sons to one of the great fires that had been kindled. Quetzalcoatl's son had been born without a mother. The god threw his son into the fire first, and he became the new sun. His son rose out of the fire and went into the sky, where he still is to this day. Tlaloc waded into the fire had nearly burned itself out. He took his son, whose mother was Chalchiuhtlicue, and threw him into the glowing embers and ashes. Tlailoc's son rose out of the fire and went into the sky as the moon. Because Quetzalcoatl's son went into the blazing fire, he became a creature of fire and glows with a light that is too bright to look at. But because Tlailoc's son went into the embers and ashes, his light is dimmer and his face is splattered with ashes. And this is how night became divided from day, and why the moon and the sun crossed the sky in different ways and along different paths. But another tale tells how the sickly god Nanahuatzin willingly sacrificed himself to become the fifth son. The gods had gathered at the great city of Teotihuacan to discuss how they might make a new sun to replace the old one that had been destroyed by the flood. One of them needed to jump into the bright bonfire and then rise into the sky. Nanahuatzin, god of disease, whose name means full of sores, came forward. "I will do this thing," he said, "even though my body is diseased and bent, and even though my skin is covered with leprosy." The other gods laughed at Nanahuatzin. They said, "You silly fellow, you are sickly and weak. You will not have the courage to jump into the fire. Let someone else become the sun." Then Tecuztecatl, the one from the place of the conch, came forward. He was a most wealthy god, well made in his body, and well dressed with all manner of gold and feather ornaments. "I will do this thing," he said, "for it would be better that a healthy god make this sacrifice than a sickly one." The other gods agreed that it should be so, and caused a great fire to be kindled. While this was being done, Tecuztecatl and Nanahuatzin retired to places where they might fast and prepare offerings to purify themselves, so they would be worthy to become the new sun. Tecuztecatl prepared offerings that were made of the finest things, of jade and quetzal feathers, and balls of gold. Nanahuatzin's offerings were humble reeds and the spines of the maguey cactus. At the appointed time, Tecuztecatl and the other gods gathered around the fire. The wealthy god, dressed in his best finery, strode up to the great blaze with its searing heat. He made as to throw himself in, but at the last minute he balked and walked away. Again he tried, but he could not bring himself to jump into the flames. He tried again, and yet again, but each time his courage failed him. After the fourth time, he walked away from the bonfire and from the other gods, ashamed that he had not been able to turn himself into the sun as he boasted he would do. The other gods wondered how they would make a new sun, since Tecuztecatl had failed to jump into the fire. But all was not lost. Nanahuatzin had not forgotten his offer to become the new sun, and he had also fasted and purified himself so they might be a fitting sacrifice. The sickly god stepped forward, dressed in garments made of paper, and walked straight up to the raging fire. He stared into the heart of the blaze for just a moment, then threw himself into the very heart of the flames. Nanahuatzin's hair was ablaze. His clothing was ablaze. His skin crackled with the heat of the flames that licked all around his body. Tecuztecatl saw the courage of the sickly Nanahuatzin and was deeply ashamed. So he also stepped forward and jumped into the flames with Nanahuatzin. An eagle and a jaguar had been watching the sacrifice too. They saw the courage of Nanahuatzin and Tecuztecatl, and so they joined the gods, throwing themselves among the flames. This is why the eagle's feathers are tipped with black, and why the jaguar is covered with black spots. This is also why the Aztecs created the orders of the eagle and the jaguar to honor their bravest warriors. After the eagle and jaguar had thrown themselves into the fire, the other gods waited to see what would become of Nanahuatzin and Tecuztecatl. Slowly, light began to rim the world. The gods looked all around, wondering where the source of the light was. Then, suddenly, Nanahuatzin burst forth over the eastern horizon, covering the world with the brightest light. His sacrifice transformed him from the lowly, sickly leper god into a new sun god, Olin Tonatiuh, whose name means movement of the sun. But Tecuztecatl had also transformed by his sacrifice. And shortly after Nanahuatzin rose into the sky, so did Tecuztecatl. And now the gods had a new problem, for there was not one but two suns in the sky, and the light they made together was too bright for anyone to see anything. One of the gods snatched up a rabbit that was nearby and flung it into the face of Tecuztecatl. The rabbit hit Tecuztecatl so hard that his light was dimmed. That was how the moon was created, and the shape of a rabbit was now permanently marked on his face. Then the gods rejoiced, for now they had both a sun and a moon. But their joy was short-lived, for Tonatiuh refused to move from his place in the sky until all the gods had sacrificed themselves to him. The other gods grew angry and refused to do this thing, but Tonatiuh was steadfast. He would not move until he had drunk the blood of the other gods. Tlahuizcalpantecutli, Lord of Dawn, who is the morning star, said, "I will stop Tonatiuh. I will save you from having to be sacrificed." Tlahuizcalpantecutli threw a dart at Tonatiuh with all his might, but it missed. Tonatiuh threw a dart of his own back at the morning star, hitting him in the head. This changed Tlahuizcalpantecutli into Itztlacoliyuki, curved obsidian, the god of coldness, frost, and obsidian. And this is why it is always cold right before the sun rises. The other gods realized they could no longer refuse what Tonatiuh demanded. They came before him with bare breasts, and Quetzalcoatl cut out their hearts with a sacrificial knife. Once the gods had been sacrificed, Quetzalcoatl took their clothing and ornaments and wrapped them into sacrificial bundles. These sacred bundles were then worshipped by the people. Sated with the blood of the gods, Tonatiuh began to move across the sky, and he has done so ever since. And this was the birth of the fifth sun, the sun under which all life lives to this day. But still, the people offer blood and hearts to the sun, to ensure that he is satisfied and to keep him on his sacred path across the sky.